So hi, I'm Taylor Kraus. I'm CCL's National Outreach and Partnership Coordinator, which are CCL Business Climate Leader volunteers. Noel Smyth is a technology executive in the financial services industry. He has a degree in engineering and sustainability and lives outside Philadelphia with his wife Susan and their dog Mia and several chickens. Currently, he is a CCL volunteer with various roles, including chapter leader, liaison to his Senate office, the project manager for the monthly calling campaign tool, and is active in CCL's Business Climate Leaders Action Team. Next is Mark Menzer, who is a retired executive from the HVAC and energy efficiency industries. He served with national trade associations and on the boards of international science and engineering organizations. And he currently is active on the CCL's Business Climate Leaders Action Team as well, where he serves on the steering committee. Again, this presentation will be recorded, as well as accompanying slides be made available. But I encourage you to reach out to our speakers after the presentation. And with that, I'll let Mark and Noel take it away.
Thank you, Taylor. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the Business Climate Leaders organization, but first, talk about businesses and why they lobby. So they actually have an outsized impact on legislation in the United States. They spend over $3.5 billion a year lobbying. The largest industry lobby is the pharmaceutical industry, and the insurance and finance is kind of the third. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that today because that's where I spend much of my time. Corporations spend about $2 billion lobbying for tax reductions, which resulted in about a $400 billion tax windfall for corporations. So lobbying is just good business right now, and it'll continue to be. So by and large, corporations are shaping legislation in the United States. So CCL members have a vast business network. As we talked about earlier, there's, I think, almost 200,000 CCL members across the world, and many CCL volunteers have extensive business backgrounds and very large networks. Shareholders are becoming more active in companies' policies and driving them to be more sustainable in what they do. And consumers are becoming more aware of companies' sustainability practices, including their environmental impacts. The Business Climate Leaders is a CCL action team that works with businesses and leaders to endorse the Energy Innovation and Carbon Dividend Act. We engage businesses in advocating for effective national price on carbon emissions. So we educate them on the Energy Innovation and Carbon Dividend Act. We help them advocate for healthy environments. So companies many times are looking for the right policy to stand behind. This helps their sustainability practice, which again helps their bottom line. So we become consultative in some respects to some companies as well. We encourage businesses to generally recognize the importance of putting climate on their lobbying agenda. Again, it's just part of their dialogue with legislators as they go in there. So the Business Climate Leaders is organized by business sectors. There's 12 teams. I participated in a couple, and I'm going to talk about those in a minute. But if you want to see which ones are out there, go to the BCL website, and it's likely you're going to find some level of interest in one of the sectors that we represent. I'm going to talk a little bit about what I do now in the finance insurance sector, but first I'll also talk about, I spent some time working to help the beer team. The beer team gives me an excuse to visit new breweries, but again, I work in the financial services sector and I spend much of my time there. Currently, I'm working with JP Morgan Chase. I'm an alumnus of JP Morgan, and I'm also a customer. And so I started this project out by researching the company's position on climate, and they do make a very strong statement and have a robust sustainability program. The CEO recently stated at a conference this year that we should be considering a carbon fee and dividend, very similar to what we propose. And they also recently endorsed the Climate Leadership Council plan, which, as you know, is very similar to our plan. So I know they are a good candidate to support our plan as well. And I started at the top of the company. I wrote to the CEO, Jamie Dimon, and then I went and reached out to their head of government relations and finally the head of their sustainability finance group. So I'm working, I'm hoping to work with one or all of those to bring that forward. I also give feedback to their Twitter feed at chase.com is one of their Twitter feeds, and they do get feedback from their customers there, and they consider it. So we are in the beginning of this project, and we hope to make progress later this year. And if you are a Chase customer, please send them a tweet and ask them to endorse. If you have friends or family in senior positions at JP Morgan or have contacts there, please reach out to me and help make inroads to this account. So this is just one example. We are in active discussions with several other finance and insurance companies in the BCL. And now I'm going to turn it over to Mark and talk a little about his wine project.
Good. Thank you, Noel. So let me talk about another case study where we are working with the Virginia wine industry and just starting our work there. And this is a study that will hopefully encourage some of you to work with some of the businesses in your areas as well. So first, a little bit about me. I've worked for 2 industry trade associations. I worked for an equipment manufacturer. And so I did some advocacy here in Washington. And also, I like wine. And so as a CCLer, I am reaching out to trade associations and to manufacturers and to Virginia wineries. So, of course, our aim is to get the wineries to endorse carbon fee and dividends. And so you say, well, why Virginia wineries? Well, wineries certainly going to be impacted by climate change. Growing grapes is very sensitive to the climate, to sun and to rainfall. Wineries have been targeted as a possible good ally by our Business Climate Leaders Group. We've been having success already in signing on wineries from California to New York, from Michigan to North Carolina. And in Virginia, we have over 300 wineries that employ 4,800 people, and they add almost $1.5 billion to our state economy. So they're very significant in the state's economy. And of course, wineries are located in the more rural, more conservative parts of the state. So getting them on board and getting the ears of the more conservative elected officials is very important. And why am I doing it? Well, again, I like wine. So, we talk about this declaration. What are these declarations? Well, we have declarations in Business Climate Leaders for each of the industries that we're going after. And these declarations have lots of whereas climate is changing, whereas the wine industry is very affected by climate change, whereas your customers, your shareholders, your employees want you to do something, that sort of thing. Now, let it be resolved that we declare climate change as a substantial and growing risk, and that we will endorse the Energy Innovation and Carbon Dividend Act. And this declaration and all the information we're talking about here can be found under our Business Climate Leaders website. And if you want to engage with Business Climate Leaders, go to BCL Resources about BCL and how to get involved, and you will see so much information there that we have for all of the industries that we're going after. And I went there to do this project, and there was information on the wine industry, the economics of this act for the wine industry, collateral material, how to conduct a meeting, lots of things to get us going. So for my project, I'm following this plan. I found a friend, first of all, to help. Warren Beaton, who I've worked with in industry for years, agreed to work with me, and we're having a lot of fun working together again. We, first of all, looked at what's already been done, talked to people in our local chapter, our state and regional coordinators, and found out that people had gone after the wine industry before, so there was something to learn there. Of course, we did our research, checked the trade press, lots of good stuff there. We found a list of all the Virginia wineries and kind of narrowed it down to those who looked like they were environmentally active. We got a big break in finding somebody who knew the right people. And then we just started following it up with calls and emails. Hard to get to people this time of with what's going on now to listen, but we have had some. We've had some good conversations. We've just started the process, but we can see that it's going to take some time. It's going to take patience and politeness and persistence, but there is some interest in what we're doing. So it is a very fast look at a project that's just starting. But if you want to work with us, if you think there's some industries that you can contact, go to community page, working with others, action teams, and take a look at our Business Climate Leaders page. With that, Taylor, I'll turn it back to you, and maybe we've got some questions.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, Mark, and thank you so much, Noel. Those were great presentations. And yeah, next I'm going to turn it over to the questions. And I'm not going to be able to get through all of the awesome questions, but I encourage you all to please reach out to our amazing presenters afterward, or feel free to reach out to me. And we're going to keep their contact info up during the questions. So first question for both Mark and Noel: have you or do you foresee shifting your outreach in the time of COVID? And if yes, how so?
I'll touch on that a little bit. I mean, COVID is kind of made Zoom normalized for everybody in Zoom meetings, and one of the things that has kind of helped us meet with a number of businesses is we're able to just schedule time, and instead of a meeting taking a half a day to go visit an office and a location, we can pretty much weave it into our, at least I can weave it into my own work day, and be able to meet with business leaders just on a Zoom call for half an hour or an hour. So in that regard, it's made, it's kind of normalized digital conferencing and meeting via Zoom. So. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would add to that as the speakers this morning reminded us, there's a real parallel between the current pandemic that we're going through and the crisis that faces us in climate change. So that's a good entree. And as Hugh Welch said at an earlier breakout, during times of disruption like what we're in now, this is really time to make some changes. So this is a great time to be doing it, and there are some progressive companies, I think, that recognize that.
Great. So to dovetail off of that question, what are some obstacles then that current endorsing businesses might be facing that maybe as a volunteer reaching out to them should just be really hypersensitive of?
Yeah, so I think it got mentioned earlier in our presentation that during this time, with a pandemic and with social unrest, that companies are focusing on some of the other issues that are at large today. And Mark mentioned in his talk that patience is key, right? So just continue to build the relationships and practice patience, and eventually those relationships will pay dividends in the long term. So.
Yeah, and there are certainly a lot of distractions in working with the wine industry here. It turns out that they're just reopening now and letting people come back. So they're hiring people and trying to comply with the new rules of having people at their wineries, so that they can give you one ear, but at least you get that, you get the foot in the door, and just continue to talk to them, send them things as we get more studies and articles. Now that I've got a contact, I send it to them, and we'll be back there, and we'll be talking to them some more.
Great. So when you do get that initial interest from a business, what do you ask from them, or like how does your first meeting kind of look like?
Yeah, a lot of what we do is very similar to what CCL has taught us around lobbying. So a lot of listening, understanding, their position, what's important to them, building that relationship. Again, thanking them up front. But a lot of what we do in those first meetings is very similar to what we might do in our first lobby meeting, which is to first listen to understand. Mark?
Yeah, I mean, obviously that ultimately we want to get them to endorse this legislation, but we'll ask them just to start talking about pricing, carbon pricing, or endorse the concept of carbon pricing, and then maybe ultimately we'll get a fee and dividend. But again, it's a process, and for some of them it's the first time they're thinking about it, and for others, they've been there. So we got to know your audience and kind of start where they are and lead them along the right path.
Great. Yeah. So you've both mentioned that when you get that initial contact and you can kind of start them through the ladder to up to supporting carbon fee and dividend and then the bill. So for that initial part, do you have any suggestions for networking to find common contacts at a company?
Sure. I'll mention a few things. One is digital. I mean, I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. I have a fairly big network on LinkedIn, and chances are someone I know is connected to someone that I need to know in terms of doing this. And another one is just tell people you're doing this, and you'd be surprised. Who knows who. And the example I'll give is I had in my chapter meeting about a month or two ago, we had a new member, and I was talking about the projects that we're doing, and one of them is talking to Catholic colleges to get the presidents to endorse. And sure enough, this new member plays tennis with a president of St. Joseph's University, which was on our target list. So just by mentioning that project, I found another contact. So yeah, talk about it. Mention it to people, family members, your organization.
Yeah, and within business climate leaders, I mean, the people who are working there are either current or former business leaders themselves, and they've got great networks. So I was just surprised when I mentioned that I wanted to do this, how they backed me up, found people that would help me. We're, again, early in the process now, but people who know people who know people, there's a lot. It grows, the network grows very quickly.
Great. So for volunteers then that might not have a vibrant business background, would BCL coach them, help them like to research a company and get them started?
Absolutely. So I'm fairly new to BCL, and I was duly impressed with not only the organizational skills and how they run it like a business, but also the research that has already been kind of done on many companies and the process by which we find out about research. And I guess just the one example is we were looking at certain key Senate staff or senators in different states, and we knew through the research who the top donors are to each of those senators. And so if we wanted to help influence that senator, why not start with the folks that are influencing them with their donations? So yeah, very impressive network. And Mark, you probably have a little bit more experience with that.
Yeah, again, I would say go to our webpage. We also have something called office hours, where one of us will be available at a certain time each week, and you can just call in, Zoom in, and if you've got some questions or just don't know what to do next, ask us, and we'll start working with you. So it's a great place to start.
Great. Well, thank you both so much. And I see that John dropped in the chat. If anybody would like to get involved with Business Climate Leaders, the action team. And again, appreciate both of you so much and all the work that you do. And if anyone wants to contact us, please feel free.